cha Hrishikesha Pritak Keshi Nisudana. Arjuna said, O mighty armed one, I wish to understand the purpose of renunciation, tyaga, and of the renounced order of life, sannyas, O killer of the Keshi demon, Hrishikesha. 8. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Kamyanam Karmanam Nyasam Sannyasam Kavayo Viduhu Sarva Karma Palatyagam Prahustyagam Vichakshanaha. The Supreme Lord said, to give up the results of all activities is called renunciation, tyaga, by the wise. And that state is called the renounced order of life, sannyas, by great learned men. Tyagyam doshavad ityeke karma prahur manishinaha yagyadana tapa karma nyatyajyam iti chapare. Some learned men declare that all kinds of fruitive activities should be given up, but there are yet other sages who maintain that acts of sacrifice, charity, and penance should never be abandoned. Nishchayam shrinume tatra tyage bharata satama tyago hi purusha vyagra trividha samprakirtitaha. O best of the Bharatas, hear from me now about renunciation. O tiger among men, there are 3 kinds of renunciation declared in the scriptures. Thank you for chanting. And now back to text 22 of chapter 17. And charity performed at an improper place and time, and given to unworthy persons without respect and with contempt, is charity in the mode of ignorance. Purport. Contributions for indulgence in intoxication and gambling are not encouraged here. That sort of contribution is in the mode of ignorance. Such charity is not beneficial. Rather, sinful persons are encouraged. Similarly, if a person gives charity to a suitable person without respect and without attention, that sort of charity is also said to be in the mode of darkness. Maharaj, we would benefit immeasurably by hearing you speak on Bhagavad Gita. Would you like to speak on this verse? Okay. So if someone gives charity, for example, sometimes homeless people ask for charity on the street, and somebody may think, okay, this actually happens a lot. We meet someone on book distribution, and then they'll say, oh, I just gave the last of my money to that guy down there on the street. But then what happens is when someone who's begging for charity on the street then goes and uses that charity for beer or some other kind of intoxication or illicit activities, then because you or whoever gave them that money to engage in that activity, now you get some of the reaction. So the person, somebody is thinking, okay, I did a good thing by giving this guy my money, but actually they're getting some of the sinful reaction of his intoxication or whatever illicit thing he does with that money. But if they give that money, it's explained in the scriptures, to different kinds of people, they get different kinds of benefits back. Such as if they give to a brahmana, they get so much they get a large amount back in return. But if they give to a Vaishnava, a devotee of the Lord, they get unlimited back, because that money is actually an offering to Krishna. So it's helping them come to their eternal position of being an eternal servitor of the Lord, not taking another material body in this world, going back to Godhead, because that donation is actually the beginning of their service. And in so many ways, people can engage in service by meeting a devotee. Just by hearing from them, they're already beginning to hear about Krishna. They're engaging in service that way. They're gaining some faith when they hear the devotee defeat some of their arguments and ideas that sense gratification is the supreme. they're gaining some faith. And then when they become a little bit convinced and decide to give a donation, that is giving them so much benefit, because they're offering some of the fruits of their work to be engaged in Krishna's service. So it's actually an incredibly big deal for that jiva soul. And then also, it's a big responsibility too for the preacher. Srila Prabhupada explained, if you spend 1 paisa that's meant to be used for the Lord for your own sense gratification, then you what is it? You go to hell for a long time. Something really, it's a very big deal that you shouldn't spend even 1 paisa for your own sense gratification, or, suffer for a long time in this material world. So there's different methods of charity being described here. And we understand that the best charity is if somebody can give for the propagation of Krishna consciousness. That's the topmost, because any kind of charity somebody gives, it might benefit in some material way. There might be a foundation for feeding people. There might be something for clothing people, something for making hospitals to cure diseases. But all of those will fix something wrong with the material body for some amount of time. But once that fix is done, still there's other diseases that come, and still eventually that body has to break down and die. But yes, Maharaj?
Krishna knows the best how to engage everything. So if we're trying to do some good for the people, or for animals, or for whoever, then we want it to be properly utilized and properly organized. You wouldn't like to give to a institution that was famous for misusing the funds. They didn't keep the track of the money, and they lost the food, and they may have had good intentions even, but they just weren't very well organized. But you like to give money when you know it's going to be properly done. You get the most benefit in giving. So if you want to get the most out of your gift, give it to someone who knows how to spend it. Like someone has volunteered to go and help you fix your automobile engine. So you give it to the person who knows how to do it, what to buy, where to put the new parts. If you give it to someone who doesn't know, he goes and buys the wrong part and puts it wrong, jams it in the wrong way. It ruins the investment. You feel real bad about it. Yeah, I gave some money, but really misused it. Had good intentions, but so good intentions are not enough. But we see intentions are something. But if one's really intelligent, then he gives to Krishna, or those who are like Krishna, trained like Krishna. Devotees are trained like Krishna to think like he thinks, to engage everything how he engages it. So you can feel completely satisfied. I gave it to the best possible person or group to utilize it. So it's not just that he's selfish and doesn't want to help others. He wants to help as many people as possible. So the best way to do that is to give to Krishna. And besides that, Krishna is the owner of everything. So if you give somebody else's property away in your name, and then you want to get some nice feeling from it, you won't, because it's not yours to give away, it's against the law. We don't own anything to give away, actually. All we can do, if we're smart, is try to quickly give it back to the person who it was taken from and apologize and beg for his mercy that he doesn't turn you in. That's the best thing you can do. Don't try to give it away quickly to as many charities as you can and try to get a lot of benefit from it. So giving to Krishna and the representative of Krishna is the best scenario, either from the point of view of efficiency or just plain lawfulness. It's lawful to give back to the owner.
Krishna is the owner of all things, including Lakshmi. So then we also have to be attentive with it. Like in the text, Prabhupada was explaining, if someone gives charity to a suitable person without respect and without attention, that charity is said to be in the mode of darkness. And then at the same time, on the end that's accepting the charity, if that's done without any attention and we misplace the money or something like that, then that's also in darkness. Srila Prabhupada was never very much keen to this kind of hippie mentalities and hippie ways of doing things. We were just reading in the Shikshamrita, which has many of his letters to different disciples, that some people were relating the movement for different reasons. They were like in the Back to Godhead magazine, sometimes there were different articles related to different famous people who happened to be seen as hippies. And so Prabhupada was saying in this letter, he was writing to his disciple that whatever affection he has for the hippie movement, he should give it up. So we might also bring some of these hippie habits with us in the devotional service, like not being so organized or leaving money around. But Srila Prabhupada was always extremely careful with these things and so organized with them. When he came to America, you can see in his journal, every day he's logging exactly how much money there was. And okay, we had a program tonight, it went well, $7 collection. And then the next day, okay, we had to spend 20 cents on a banana and this one. So he's logging every amount of money. So he wouldn't like to see money that's given for his books just laying around in different places like a floor or a drawer or things. These are like hippie habits that we bring with us. But by seeing the way that Srila Prabhupada does things, we can be encouraged to also become very organized and responsible for different aspects of his movement. And in this way, we'll actually be empowered to get more donations from people, just like, because Krishna is a person, so he's in charge of everything. So if we're accepting donations from people for books and then they fall out of our pocket or we lose them somewhere or don't actually properly take care of them, why would he send more people to actually take books from us and give us money? But if we're distributing books responsibly, then many books can be going out and many donations can be coming in. And like this, we can be fully engaged in the most blissful process. I heard Parmeshwar Prabhu explaining that sometimes when we set up book tables at colleges, many people come to them and they take a stack of books, and it's hard to tell them, hey, actually we ask a donation for those. Sometimes they run away real quickly before you can get a donation. And then sometimes people come and they take one very small book and they give a big donation. So people are sometimes confused on how to balance it, how to actually make sure you're getting enough money for the books and not fry people out, like confuse them by suggesting they give a certain amount. And he was saying that when he just distributes books responsibly, meaning he's telling them, okay, if they have a huge stack of them, he recommends to them, just so you know, it costs us this much to print a set like that. And if, he distributes them responsibly, covering like the cost of the books. He says if he does that, then somehow by the end of the day, it's always taken care of. Krishna always makes sure that the books are covered, and still many of them went out. If he's not just giving them, a whole bunch for free. And then he said if he distributes responsibly, Krishna pretty much covers the rest of the situation. Somehow by the end of the day, everything goes well. From the beginning of creation, the three syllables Om Tat Sat have been used to indicate the supreme absolute truth, Brahman. They were uttered by Brahmanas while chanting Vedic hymns and during sacrifices for the satisfaction of the Supreme. Purport. It has been explained that penance, sacrifice, charity, and foods are divided into three categories: the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance. But whether first class, second class, or third class, they are all conditioned, contaminated by the material modes of nature. When they are aimed at the Supreme, Om Tat Sat, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Eternal, they become means for spiritual elevation. In scriptural injunctions, such an objective is indicated. These three words, Om Tat Sat, particularly indicate the absolute truth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the Vedic hymns, the word Om is always found. One who acts without following the regulations of the scriptures will not attain the absolute truth. He will get some temporary result, but not the ultimate end of life. The conclusion is that the performance of charities, sacrifice, and penance must be done in the mode of goodness. Performed in the modes of passion or ignorance, formerly, when Brahma, the first created living entity, performed sacrifices, he spoke these three names of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The same principle holds by disciplic succession. So this hymn has great significance. Bhagavad Gita recommends, therefore, that any work should be done for Om Tat Sat, or for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When one performs penance, charity, and sacrifice with these three words, he is acting in Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is a scientific execution of transcendental activities which enables one to return home back to Godhead. There is no loss of energy in acting in such a transcendental way. So, in the matter of book distribution, there's no actually worry about Lakshmi. Srila Prabhupada said, if you focus on this one activity of book distribution, you'll never need to worry about money or Lakshmi. Because if you're getting all of the books of Srila Prabhupada and then distributing them and then getting more of the books, unlimited Lakshmi is coming back. People are donating for the book and you're giving it to them. And then you go and you buy more books and you give them out and they're donating for the book. You give another one like this. There's unlimited Lakshmi coming. And all you do is you just keep doing the same thing. You just keep giving them the books and they keep giving a donation. And there's many different kinds of work that can be done. But this activity of book distribution, it's the supreme preaching activity. There's no kind of preaching that's anywhere near as effective or as important as book distribution. So in the Srimad Bhagavatam, it's explained that this Bhagavatam is made to make a revolution in the impious lives of a misdirected civilization. So by distributing the books of Srila Prabhupada, it's making a revolution in the entire world. And it can actually change the face of the whole planet. We've already seen there's so many things that have changed in the world since the Krishna consciousness movement came about. And since the world has been flooded with more and more millions of Srila Prabhupada's books, already there have been so many cultural changes. When devotees were first taking up Krishna consciousness, there was no scope at all for things like vegetarianism or other ideas that are within the Krishna consciousness movement. If you were vegetarian, people thought you were crazy or that you might die. But now many people are. It's a mainstream thing. So like this, that's a small idea, but there's so many ways in which an entire culture gets impacted when knowledge is given to that culture. So we're hearing how work should be done for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So if the only way to actually do an activity and make sure that all of it is fully transcendentalized is to engage full-time in preaching. Just like, okay, so somebody may offer some food to the Supreme Lord, and then it becomes prasadam. So the offering, it was material, and then it became spiritual. And the best thing is when all the aspects of something are spiritual. Like you make the offering, and then the intention is spiritual. The intention is, okay, Krishna will enjoy this, and then the food that comes back, the prasadam, that's spiritual. There's a verse where Krishna talks about this, how like the sacrifice, the ghee, the intention behind it, all of the things become Krishnaized in devotional service. But when we're on this mixed platform of devotional service and we still have some material desires, then not everything is Krishnaized in every activity that we're doing. For instance, okay, say somebody, they offer something to the Lord because they, if someone's preparing something at home and they have deities or something, they might get hungry. And so then they're offering something and it's going to Krishna. So the offering is becoming spiritualized. The activity is spiritual, but the intention was material, that I'm hungry. So I offer it to Krishna and then he eats. But when someone, if you're full-time engaged in preaching, which is what the temples are made for, then everything becomes spiritualized. We make an offering to the Lord so that he enjoys it. The devotees take that offering with the energy they get from the prasadam. They go and they preach Krishna consciousness. The objects that they're using to preach are fully transcendental. They give those out. The money that comes back gets fully engaged in a transcendental service for the Lord. And like this, everything, all the instruments used, the intention, the thought, the words, everything becomes transcendentalized when one's fully engaged in preaching. So it's the perfect activity, and it's the transcendental plot created by Srila Prabhupada to fully change the face of the whole world and take it from being a demoniac society that's engulfed in darkness, nobody knowing what is what, how to properly take care of themselves or others, and make the whole world actually into like Vaikuntha, just by engaging in this transcendental plot that Srila Prabhupada has hatched, called Srila Prabhupada's Transcendental Book Distribution. And that can best be done by distributing full sets of Srila Prabhupada's books. Because then it's not that somebody is just getting some knowledge for themselves, or maybe the one book they get goes to a friend or someone across the world or wherever, but they're getting almost a whole temple. They've now got a whole preaching center. If they get a whole set of Prabhupada's books or a whole Srimad Bhagavatam set, they put that in their home or someone else's home. And now anyone who comes there for generations can learn everything they need to know in order to perfect their life and go back home, back to Godhead. And as Prabhupada says in the purport, there's no loss of energy in acting in such a transcendental way. So it's the best use of our time. And Krishna consciousness is a scientific execution of transcendental activities which enables one to return home back to Godhead. So there's nothing new or whimsical to be made up about Krishna consciousness or how to get back to our eternal spiritual life with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But by following the instructions of the previous acharyas and following what's given in scriptures, then everything is already scientifically arranged, and how one can become Krishna conscious in this life and help others also become Krishna conscious, get back to their eternal position of serving the Lord always. Thus, the transcendentalist undertakes sacrifices, charities, and penances because beginning always with Om to attain the supreme. Purport. Om Tad Vishnu Paramam Padam. The lotus feet of Vishnu are the supreme devotional platform. The performance of everything on behalf of the Supreme Personality of Godhead assures the perfection of all activity. So sometimes people might not like to distribute Srila Prabhupada's books or go out to preach because the performance of such an activity is on behalf of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And sometimes when a conditioned soul comes to the material world, it can be hard to do things for the Supreme Personality of Godhead because the whole material world is arranged to help one forget the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So then when we start doing things that get us back in touch with the Lord and remembering him, it can be a bit of a grind. Like we heard in a class recently that Krishna consciousness is like sugar candy and our material condition is like jaundice. So when one has jaundice, the only cure is the sugar candy, but because of their diseased state, it tastes bitter. But the more they go on eating the sugar candy, the more the jaundice is cured. So similarly, the more we go on engaging in Krishna consciousness, which means hearing about the Lord and chanting about the Lord and engaging in bringing others to the Lord, then the more our disease goes away and the more we actually begin to relish the process of Krishna consciousness, the sweeter it gets. And it's all explained scientifically. You can see in Nectar of Devotion and many of Srila Prabhupada's purports, the whole process is laid out there of how the conditioned soul gradually makes progress through the practice of Krishna consciousness, starting with faith, then coming to association of devotees, then they're engaging in devotional service. Eventually they become fixed and steady in that service. Then they get a taste. They realize, there's something to this. And like this, it further develops and develops. And they begin to have a feeling for the Lord. And like this, eventually it develops into their original state of love of Godhead in many different relationships with the Lord. But in our material stage, in our neophyte condition, the process of Krishna consciousness can seem bitter. But the more one undergoes sacrifices for Krishna, the more purified they become, and then the more they can actually realize this is actually sweet. Why was I thinking this was bitter? This is a sweet piece of candy, this Krishna consciousness. So Krishna wants to see how painstakingly the devotee actually tries to engage in his service. And Srila Prabhupada explains that in order to get out of the material modes, to do that without constantly speaking to conditioned souls is very difficult. So therefore, he has this transcendental plot of book distribution. And if we engage in this process of speaking to other conditioned souls about taking Krishna to their home in the form of the Srimad Bhagavatam or in the form of Srila Prabhupada's books, then one can quickly get out of the modes of material nature. Otherwise, it's very difficult. So I'm saying all these things so that hopefully I start to do it more. Because as Parmeshwar Prabhu said, if I go a day without book distribution, that's okay. But if I go more than 2 days, I start to get weird. That's what he said. So I'm explaining this so that hopefully I do it more, because there's nothing better to do in the whole world than engage in this process of book distribution. One should perform sacrifice, penance, and charity with the word tat. The purpose of such transcendental activities is to get free from the material entanglement. To be elevated to the spiritual position, one should not act for any material gain. Acts should be performed for the ultimate gain of being transferred to the spiritual kingdom, back to home, back to Godhead. So in the Krishna consciousness movement, if one is fully engaged within it, there's no material gain. Long hours, no pay, pure bliss. That's Krishna consciousness. So one doesn't actually need to get anything for themselves, because they see that everything that I could try to get for my own sake is simply going to lead to more suffering. And this is the difference between a devotee and some materialist. There's a really nice verse where Krishna succinctly describes the difference between a materialist's so-called happiness and the happiness of a devotee. Does anyone know the verse? The word dukkha yonayaha is in it. That the wise don't actually delight in material happiness because it's temporary. Yeah, what number is it? 522. Here it is. Yehi samsparsha jaboga dukkha yonaya evate adyantavanta kunteya nateshu ramate buddha. An intelligent person does not take part in the sources of misery which are due to contact with the material senses, O son of Kunti. Such pleasures have a beginning and an end, so the wise man does not delight in them. So if one is acting for the satisfaction of Krishna, if one is engaging in Krishna consciousness, there's no material gain to be had, and they don't want any material gain, because as Srila Prabhupada said, this movement of Krishna consciousness is for the intelligent person. And Krishna is explaining here that an intelligent person doesn't take part in the sources of misery. So a devotee understands that actually any of what everybody in the world is calling happiness, which is simply just the contact of the material sense with the material sense object, they know that's actually the source of misery. It's the yoni of dukkha. Yoni means womb, and dukkha means misery. So that thing that people think is happiness, with some elation of contacting the sense with the sense object, that's actually the womb of your future miseries. And eventually it'll give you a child of suffering, of misery. So when preaching Krishna consciousness knows, even though somebody comes up to them and he says, okay, you have your Krishna consciousness and that's making you happy. I've got my, all these different activities and that's making me happy. A devotee knows that actually, no, you're not happy, but a devotee is happy, because your happiness, so-called, simply leads to suffering, whereas the devotee's happiness simply leads to more and more happiness, more and more bliss. That's what Krishna is explaining here. It's 522. So if one acts for the sake of the Lord, instead of material gain, it only gets better and better. And the purpose of such transcendental activities, if it's not for material gain, what is it? It should be for getting free from material entanglement. So what better way to satisfy the Lord than getting ourselves free from material entanglement by trying to get others free from material entanglement? So that's the process of preaching Krishna consciousness. We see somebody on the street and we freely distribute this Krishna consciousness to them. Yes, the book is for a donation, but freely, as in there's no distinction. Whoever they are, here, you don't have to, there's no mental impediment or hesitation. Will they like it? Will they not like it? No, take this book, read one sentence, read one word, give a donation. If they just touch this book, they'll be supremely benefited. So like this, the devotee doesn't have to worry, what is the personal gain for me? If they just simply act for Krishna by trying to bring others to Krishna without any thought of my own bodily comfort, my own mental serenity, my own whatever it is, if they simply act for Krishna to bring others to Krishna consciousness, then it's the most pleasing activity, and it's freeing them and others from material entanglement. Yes, Magadari Prabhu?
So I have a question about this point. It seems that in this verse, Prabhupada is saying, act for your own welfare, which is this real welfare, which is to go back to Godhead. Don't do it for any other reason. So on this point, it's not like I'm going out. This is my thoughts. You can please, let me know if it's correct or if it needs adjustment. It's like, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Srila Prabhupada, they're the ones that are gonna take people out of the material world too. And they gave me an order, which is to share this with everyone I know, everyone I meet. And if I follow the order of the spiritual master, then I'll go back to Godhead. So my question is it, you're saying, try to save other people or bring them out.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm wondering is because I've heard some devotees, they say, when you go out, you're going out for your own purification. I'm just wondering what's the subtlety there? Like, it seems like, is it both at once, simultaneous, one in difference, or is it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, all good things are coming. You're getting purified. The person who's taking the book's getting purified. The person who's not taking the book is getting purified. The person seeing you give the book is getting purified. The whole thing is the most purifying activity. And Krishna says, there's no one more dear to me than one who preaches this science of Bhagavad Gita to the devotees. So we're going out. Why? So that we can become purified and go back to Godhead. That's one reason. But also, like you said, because it's the order of Srila Prabhupada, who says all over the place that this is our real business to distribute these books. And in this way, the world will gradually change. And then we're also going out because it's the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who's saying, whomever you meet, preach to them Krishna consciousness, become a guru, deliver the land. That's his order, to tell whoever you meet to surrender to Krishna. And so how will they know to surrender to Krishna unless they get one of these books of Srila Prabhupada, which tell them on every page to surrender to Krishna, which tell them on every page you're not this body. So all of those factors are there. It's an all-auspicious activity. So there's some verses that Vijay Prabhu, the minister of book distribution, reads before going out. And I, unfortunately, maybe I can pull it up because I'm not remembering it. But there's one that explains how when one is engaging in this activity of preaching Krishna consciousness, the whole thing is all auspicious. You know, as you're saying, there's so many different aspects to that. But for that reason, one shouldn't be distraught if someone doesn't take the book, or, you know, elated if they do, because the entire activity is auspicious. So going and trying, whatever happens, if one just tries to engage in bringing conditioned souls to Krishna consciousness, that activity is all auspicious. Let's see. I'm trying to find the verses. I found a few quotes that he said, but I'm not finding the verse. Okay, sorry. I'll find it for next time. Yeah, is there any other comments or questions? You can lead the way.
So I think I forgot. I had something in my mind, and then thank you.
This is really common now for some reason. Not sure what's going on. Is there any other comment or question? Mm-hmm. Just after. Radhastali Mataji had a comment or question. Is there the wireless one doesn't have battery? Yeah. So the question was, if everything is a part of Krishna, how is it that anything is impure? So the material world is described as Krishna's external energy. So we understand that parts of it are impure. If it's a part of Krishna, how could something impure come from the supreme pure? I don't know why it's stumping me this. Yeah, Magadari Prabhu?
Well, is it our propensity that's impure to try to thieve it from the Lord?
Yeah, that's one thing there. The impurity is that, or Maya, or the illusion is that thinking I am separate from the Lord. I can be the enjoyer. I can be the proprietor. I can be the supreme friend. That's Krishna's position. So that's what the difference between something being material is. Material means I'm trying to, with my false ego, engage everything in the service of my body and senses. But then everything can become spiritualized when we connect everything back to Krishna and use it as an offering to Krishna. But then practically speaking, we still have to understand that there are certain things that are impure. Like, okay, a brahmana might purify themselves to go and worship the deity, but still if that brahmana passes stool, then he and the stool are impure and he has to go take bath. So there's still things that are impure in the material world because it's Krishna's external energy. So it's not that everything in the world is Krishna. In one sense, it is Krishna, but in another sense, it's different. So Srila Prabhupada gives this example for the external energy. And this is a good question because it's getting into the realm of, this idea of everything being all one, and this idea that Srila Prabhupada is defeating throughout all of his books, of this Mayavadi idea that everything is all one, everything is Krishna, everyone is Krishna. So it's a very good question. We can get more into the details of that. But what was I saying? Prabhupada gives the example that, okay, I've spoken on this recording, and when it's played later, that's still me speaking, but it's now my separated energy. So like that, this material world is Krishna's separated energy. It's him in one sense, but at the same time, it's different. So it's not that I can just come in contact with anything in the material world, and then it's the same as coming in contact with Krishna. I immediately get purified of all my material desires. No, but things in the material world, Krishna's external energy can be used again in his service, and then it actually does become purifying. But while it's in this material world, being exploited by living entities in this material consciousness, that, okay, let me use this food, I'll, eat it just for my enjoyment, then it's still a material thing. It's impure, it's sinful. But the second that someone actually says, wait, don't touch that, don't even look at it, and they take that food and they make a nice arrangement out of it and offer it to Krishna, then it becomes spiritualized. So things in this material world can be impure as long as they're not connected to Krishna. They're still coming from him. It's still his separated energy. He's still in every atom, but it's separated. And that's why Lord Chaitanya, he's giving the supreme philosophy of Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva, that everything is simultaneously one with and different from Krishna. It's one with him in the sense that this is all his energy, and it's different from him in the sense that it's separated. And same with the jiva souls. They're one with Krishna in quality, but they're separate in the fact that they are all individual people. They're made of the same substance, but in a minute quantity. So Krishna is like the whole gold mine, and the jiva soul is like the little gold ornament. of course, I'm sure devotees could churn that idea for a long time. Otherwise, what's the point of all of our reading where Prabhupada is destroying, Mayavad philosophy on like every other purport? So hopefully we can have more questions and comments on that in the future. Is that okay? All right. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai.